Millionaire woman's car broke down. A single dad helped her and got the surprise of his life. The autumn wind swept across the desolate stretch of Highway 89 in rural Montana, carrying with it the scent of approaching rain and the promise of an early winter. Sarah Mitchell pressed her manicured fingers against the steering wheel of her silver Mercedes-Benz S-Class, watching helplessly as steam billowed from beneath the hood. The digital dashboard displayed a series of warning lights that seemed to mock her current predicament. At 38, Sarah had built an empire from nothing. Mitchell Technologies, her software development company, had revolutionized data security systems for Fortune 500 companies. She owned penthouses in Manhattan and Los Angeles, a vacation home in the Hamptons, and had enough money in her accounts to buy a small country. But none of that mattered now. Stranded on a 2-lane highway with no cell service and the nearest town 40 miles away, she stepped out of the vehicle, her designer heels clicking against the asphalt. The contrast was stark. Her pristine business suit and perfectly styled auburn hair against the vast, unforgiving landscape of Big Sky country. Sarah had been driving back from a business meeting in Billings, choosing the scenic route instead of flying, a decision she was now deeply regretting. The sound of an approaching vehicle made her turn. A weathered pickup truck, its blue paint faded and its bumper held together with duct tape, slowed and pulled over behind her Mercedes. Sarah's first instinct was caution. She'd heard stories about remote highways and strangers with questionable intentions. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man in his early 30s. He was tall and lean, with calloused hands and work boots that had seen better days. His flannel shirt was clean but worn, and his jeans bore the honest stains of manual labor. Everything about him spoke of hard work and modest means. Marcus Thompson had been driving home from his second job at the lumber yard, his 8-year-old daughter Emma waiting for him at his sister's house. The single father worked 2 jobs to make ends meet: maintenance at the local elementary school during the day and loading lumber in the evenings. Every dollar mattered when you were raising a child alone. He approached Sarah's car with genuine concern etched on his weathered face. Without asking for permission or explanation, he lifted the hood and peered inside. The problem was immediately apparent. A burst radiator hose had left the engine overheated and inoperable. Marcus glanced at Sarah, taking in her expensive clothes in obvious distress. He'd seen enough broken down vehicles in his life to know this wasn't a quick roadside fix. The nearest auto parts store was in Clearwater, and it closed at 6. With the sun already setting, she'd be stranded overnight. Without hesitation, Marcus walked back to his truck and retrieved a gallon of water and some basic tools. He worked methodically, temporarily patching the hose well enough to get the engine cooled down. His movements were efficient and practiced, the result of years of fixing everything from school equipment to his own aging vehicles. Sarah watched in amazement as the stranger, who had every reason to simply drive past her expensive car, worked to help her without asking for anything in return. She tried to offer him money, pulling out her wallet and showing him several $100 bills. But Marcus simply shook his head and continued working. 20 minutes later, Marcus straightened up, wiping his hands on an old rag. The temporary fix would hold long enough to get her to town, but the car would need proper repairs. He explained that Clearwater had a decent mechanic, but she'd need to stay overnight since everything closed early in small towns. As they prepared to leave, Marcus following behind in his truck to ensure she made it safely, Sarah found herself thinking about the kindness of this stranger. In her world of corporate negotiations and high-stakes business deals, genuine altruism was rare. People always wanted something: a contract, a favor, an opportunity. But Marcus Thompson had helped her simply because she needed help. The drive to Clearwater took 30 minutes, and Sarah's Mercedes wheezed into the parking lot of Murphy's garage just as the last light faded from the sky. The mechanic, a gruff man named Joe Murphy, looked over the car and confirmed what Marcus had suspected. It would need overnight repairs and wouldn't be ready until the following evening. Clearwater was the kind of town where everyone knew. Everyone, and strangers were noticed immediately. The local motel, a modest establishment called the Pine Rest Inn, had clean rooms but was a far cry from the luxury hotels Sarah was accustomed to. As she checked in, she noticed Marcus at the front desk, asking about rates for his own room. It was then that Sarah overheard a conversation that would change everything. Marcus was on the phone with his sister, explaining that he'd be late getting Emma and asking if she could watch her overnight. His voice carried the weight of a man stretched thin, juggling responsibilities and making sacrifices that only other single parents could truly understand. The desk clerk, an elderly woman named Betty, was kind but firm about the room rate. Marcus counted out crumpled bills and loose change, coming up just short of the $60 cost. He asked quietly if he could pay the difference in the morning, explaining that his paycheck wouldn't clear until then. Sarah stepped forward without thinking. She placed a credit card on the counter and told Betty to charge both rooms to her account. Marcus protested, but Sarah insisted it was the least she could do after he'd helped her. The gesture was simple for her. $60 was less than she spent on a single lunch in Manhattan, but she could see it meant the world to him. That evening, Sarah sat in her modest motel room, staring out at the small town's quiet main street. She thought about her life in New York, the endless meetings, the constant pressure, the isolation that came with success. Here, in this forgotten corner of Montana, a man who had almost nothing had given her everything he could. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Joe Murphy called Sarah early to inform her that the repair would take longer than anticipated. A part needed to be ordered from Billings, and it wouldn't arrive until the following day. For most people, this would be a minor inconvenience, but Sarah had a board meeting scheduled for that afternoon and a major presentation to potential investors the next day. She tried every option: rental cars, private flights, even helicopter services, but Clearwater was too remote, and the weather was turning bad. A storm front was moving in, grounding small aircraft and making the mountain roads treacherous. She was genuinely stuck. Marcus found her in the motel's small restaurant, looking frustrated and defeated. He'd taken the day off from his maintenance job to help his sister move some furniture, but seeing Sarah's distress, he offered to drive her wherever she needed to go. His truck wasn't much to look at, but it was reliable, and he knew the back roads better than anyone. Sarah initially declined, not wanting to impose further, but Marcus insisted. He explained that his sister could watch Emma for another day and he'd be happy to help. The drive to Billings would take 4 hours, but from there, Sarah could catch a flight to New York. As they drove through the Montana countryside, Sarah learned about Marcus's life. He'd been married to his high school sweetheart, Lisa, and they'd had Emma when they were both 24. Lisa had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving Marcus to raise Emma alone. He'd taken the maintenance job at the school, partly because the hours allowed him to be there when Emma got off the bus, and partly because the health insurance was decent. Marcus was a good father, Sarah realized. He talked about Emma's love of reading, her struggles with math, and her dream of becoming a veterinarian. He carried pictures of her in his wallet, a gap-toothed girl with pigtails and her father's kind eyes. Every decision he made was filtered through what was best for his daughter. The conversation revealed more about Marcus's character. He'd grown up in Clearwater, the son of a rancher who'd lost the family farm during the economic downturn of the early 2000s. Instead of leaving for opportunities in larger cities, Marcus had stayed to help his aging parents and eventually met Lisa. After she died, he'd considered moving to find better work, but Emma was happy in Clearwater, close to her aunt and the only life she'd ever known. Sarah found herself sharing details about her own life that she rarely discussed. She talked about building her company from her college dorm room, about the 18-hour days and the constant pressure to prove herself in a male-dominated industry. She mentioned her parents, who'd never quite understood her ambitions, and her ex-fiancé who'd left when her career began consuming her life. What she didn't mention was the loneliness. Despite her success, despite the money and the recognition, Sarah often felt isolated. She had business associates but few real friends. She had admirers but no one who truly knew her. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd found more genuine connection in 24 hours with a stranger than she'd experienced in years of her carefully constructed life. When they reached Billings, Sarah's assistant had already arranged for a private jet to take her back to New York. As they stood in the airport parking lot, Sarah felt an unexpected reluctance to leave. She tried again to offer Marcus money for his help, but he refused, saying that helping people was just what you did. Instead, Sarah asked for his address, claiming she wanted to send a thank you card. Marcus, somewhat embarrassed, wrote down his information on a piece of paper. As her flight was called, Sarah impulsively asked him to keep in touch, giving him her business card before hurrying to catch her plane. The flight back to New York gave Sarah time to think. She'd made her board meeting via video conference and rescheduled her investor presentation, but her mind kept drifting back to the man who'd helped her without expecting anything in return. She thought about Emma growing up without a mother, and about Marcus sacrificing his own opportunities to give his daughter stability. 3 days later, Sarah made a decision that would surprise everyone who knew her. She called Marcus, ostensibly to thank him again, but really to propose something unprecedented. Mitchell Technologies was expanding, and she needed someone to head up a new division focused on educational technology. The position would require relocating to Seattle, where the company was opening a new office, but it would come with a substantial salary, full benefits, and stock options. Marcus was stunned. He'd never worked in technology, had never even owned a computer until Emma needed one for school. But Sarah explained that she wasn't looking for technical expertise. She had plenty of programmers and engineers. She was looking for someone who understood what schools needed, someone who could bridge the gap between high-tech solutions and real-world educational challenges. The offer was life-changing. The salary alone was more than Marcus made in 2 years, and the stock options could set Emma up for college and beyond. But it meant leaving everything familiar, taking Emma away from her aunt and the only home she'd ever known. Marcus asked for time to think, and Sarah gave him a week. She spent that week researching Clearwater, learning about the town's economic struggles, the school system's budget constraints, and the limited opportunities for someone with Marcus's work ethic and integrity. When Marcus called back, he had a counter-proposal. Instead of relocating to Seattle, what if Mitchell Technologies opened a smaller satellite office in Montana? The state was offering tax incentives for technology companies, and the cost of living was significantly lower than Seattle. Marcus could head up the educational division from there, and Sarah could have a foothold in a growing market. Sarah had never made a major business decision based on personal feelings, but something about Marcus's proposal appealed to her. She'd been looking for new challenges, new markets, and new perspectives. Montana offered all of that, plus the chance to work with someone whose integrity and dedication impressed her. 6 months later, Mitchell Technologies opened its Montana office in a renovated building in Bozeman, about 2 hours from Clearwater. Marcus became the director of educational outreach, traveling to schools across the region to understand their needs and develop technology solutions that actually worked in real classrooms. Emma thrived in the new environment, attending a school where her father's work was creating opportunities for other children. She still visited her aunt regularly, but she also got to experience things she'd never imagined: trips to technology conferences, meetings with software developers, and the chance to see her father valued for his insights and experience. Sarah found herself spending more time in Montana than she'd ever planned. The big sky country that had seemed so desolate during her breakdown now felt like freedom. She bought a ranch outside Bozeman, her first real home rather than just an investment. Property. The relationship between Sarah and Marcus evolved slowly. They were colleagues first, then friends, then something more. Emma was initially wary of this successful woman who'd changed their lives, but Sarah won her over by listening to her stories, helping with her math homework, and never trying to replace her mother. 2 years after that breakdown on Highway 89, Sarah stood in the same spot where Marcus had first helped her. But this time, she wasn't stranded. She was there by choice, having just purchased the land for Mitchell Technology's new research campus. The facility would bring hundreds of jobs to the region and establish Montana as a hub for educational technology. Marcus stood beside her, now her business partner and the man she'd fallen in love with. Emma was with them, 11 years old, and already talking about studying computer science so she could help run the family business someday. The broken-down Mercedes had been replaced by a reliable SUV suitable for Montana winters. Sarah still owned her apartments in New York and Los Angeles, but the ranch in Montana had become her real home. She'd discovered that success wasn't just about building an empire. It was about building a life worth living. As the sun set over the vast Montana landscape, Sarah reflected on the chain of events that had brought her here. A breakdown that had seemed like a disaster had actually been a breakthrough. Sometimes, she realized, you had to get lost before you could find your way home. The kindness of a stranger had changed everything, not just because of the help he'd provided, but because of the reminder that there were still good people in the world, people who helped others simply because it was the right thing to do. In trying to repay that kindness, Sarah had found something she'd been searching for her entire life, a purpose that went beyond profit margins and a connection that went deeper than business deals. Marcus Thompson had helped fix her car that day, but more importantly, he'd helped fix her perspective on what really mattered. And in the end, that made all the difference.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.